I finally made up my mind on which Mac Studio I'm going to be getting, and I'll shed light on that in just a moment and give you my reasoning why I chose it. But first, let's do a bit of a background because I think that's going to really help set the stage. About a year ago, almost a year ago to the date, what is it today? It's the 13th, I think it was on the 24th, I ordered a MacBook Air and I sold my iMac Pro. And the reason I sold the iMac Pro is, well, I sensed the winds of change. Apple had already announced the M architecture, and I was pretty staggered by video after video that showed the computer to be very, very fast, especially when it came to video. So after I got the M1 MacBook Air, the 8 gig version with the 7-core GPU, I started testing out videos that I've been working on with the iMac Pro. And believe it or not, when it came to export time and rendering times, the MacBook Air was about 60% faster. 60% faster, I'm not kidding, 60% faster than the iMac Pro. And it was a base unit iMac Pro, but still that was around $7,000 Canadian or about $5,000 US. And I really thought at the time, I've made the right decision. And all the rumors were pointing at a refresh of the 27-inch iMac coming up around March, April. And sure enough, we got an announcement, but we only got the 24-inch. So I've been producing content for my channel for the last year on this thing here. This is that very same computer, the 13-inch MacBook Air with 8 gigs of RAM and a 7-core GPU. And it's done a really good job. It's very fast, it's very snappy. But at the same point, the screen is really small for me. It's hard for my eyes. I make quite a few mistakes because I just can't see things as very well. And I really do want to get back to that larger screen so I can edit a whole lot better. On Tuesday, March the 8th, Apple went ahead and announced a new computer, along with some iPhones and iPads, and that new computer was the Mac Studio. Sometimes I call it Studio Mac, but they officially call it the Mac Studio. And of course, it had the M1 Max chip, which is great. We've all seen the level of performance. And I want to reference some performance figures, and it's from the Tech Champ. And he did some really good videos. This is 4K, 10-minute video. And on the 13-inch MacBook Pro, he was able to export in about 12 minutes, 12 minutes and 36 seconds, I think, to be exact. But on the M1 Max, he was able to get a staggering 6 minutes and 37 seconds. That's pretty well cutting the time in half. And this is one of those videos that kind of stuck with me. The level of performance when it comes to rendering and exporting in Final Cut on the Mac with an M1X really, really spoke to me. To have the base unit of the Mac Studio that can deliver times like this is significant. So I can cut my export and rendering times in half. And that's one of the big reasons that's entering in my decision here. So I've chosen, and this is the computer I've chosen to get, is the Mac Studio with the M1 Ultra. Not the super high-end one with the 64 GPUs, but the 48 GPU one. The one that sells for $39.99 US or about $49.99 Canadian. And yeah, it's a lot of money. And even for me on this channel, while I can afford it, it's a bit of a budgeting problem for me because I'm looking at the R1, which is going to be coming out soon. This is a major camera that's going to cost around $6,500 or more. And I really want to be able to purchase that camera for this channel. It's what my viewers want. To do reviews, to look at this camera, to use it, to report on how it feels, how it works, the results that it produces. But at the same point, I also know that I need a faster computer because it's not about the money. And I'm going to explain why. Yes, it's an extra $2,000 for the M1 Ultra, but I'm going to tell you why it's more about the time. At least it is in my case. This is my reasoning. And I'm not trying to convince you one way or another which computer to get. I just want to shed light on my reasoning. So when I look at the M1 Ultra, what I'm seeing here is, well, you've got two M1 Maxes in it, and the way the computer is designed, or I should say the system on a chip is designed, the way they're glued together, you're able to harness the full power of both systems. On the M1 Max, you get two ProRes encoders, you get two video encoders, but that doubles with the M1 Ultra. You actually get 4 Apple ProRes encoders, and that is significant. Let's go back to that test by the Tech Champ where we were looking at 12 minutes and 36 seconds for the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and that drops down to 6 minutes and 37 seconds. Based on what Apple has put out there, we can almost take that number and divide it by 2 and then add a little bit more, because it's not like you can, oh, we've got 2 M1 Maxes in it, so we can have it. You never get the efficiencies quite like that. But even if it drops it down to 4 minutes, or even 4.5 minutes, that's huge. That's a savings. And a lot of my videos, so let me back up, a lot of my videos are anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes long. So if I can save 10 minutes on rendering and another 10 minutes on exporting, that's 20 minutes. And I'll tell you why that's significant. During January and February, we had so much news coming out every day. There was at least 1 video a day, sometimes 2 or 3 videos, and that's because we had the build-up to the Olympus, the OM Systems OM1, a new flagship Micro Four Thirds camera for that platform. And then right after that, we had the Panasonic GH6, another flagship mirrorless Micro Four Thirds camera. And I was exhausted at the end of the month because I have a day job. So when I wasn't doing work, and that includes before work, my breaks, and lunchtime, I was producing videos. And sometimes on my lunchtimes, I could actually shoot a video, get it published, uploaded, and you'd be able to view it within an hour. But at the very least, my goal was with no more than an hour, get these videos up there, and that really wouldn't leave me any personal time for food. And of course, if there was another video after work, I had to try and fit that in. So basically, I was working 16-hour days. So this is why this decision to me is all about time. If I can take, let's say, a 10-minute video, which a lot of mine are shot in 10 minutes, and it takes me about 5 minutes to edit that video. Now, if I have a lot of sidebars along the side, that can certainly add a couple of more minutes, depending on how I break up that sidebar. But generally, I'm looking at about 5 minutes. So we're looking at, let's say, 15 minutes for shooting and editing. But then when it comes to the export and the render times, well, times can start to add up. So we've got 15 minutes. And if I don't have any sidebars, well, we're looking at about a 70% export and render time. So for 10 minutes, that would be about 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes to render and about 7.5 minutes to export. So we're doubling the time up to 30 minutes. And of course, there's a little bit of wastage in between, so that 30 minutes quite easily goes up to 35 or maybe even 40. And then, of course, we've got the upload time. And I have currently a 30 megabit per second upload time. So by the time all is said and done, I'm looking at about 45 to 55 minutes to create, edit, export, and render and upload the video. With an M1 Ultra, I'm able to save myself. I can easily go in there and save 10, 20 minutes just from the rendering and export times alone, let alone how it might help with the efficiency while I'm editing. I normally edit so fast that it doesn't have any time to render when I'm actually editing, but that might change. And this is a bit of a gamble for me because nobody out there has any really performance specs. It's been able to say, look, this is how it performs with Final Cut Pro, so I am taking a bit of a gamble. But at the same point, there is a 15-day return policy with Apple, so if I get it and I find that it's not delivering the results, I can definitely return it. But this is very much a time justification for me, so on one video alone, it can easily save me 20 minutes. And that gives me 20 minutes to relax, go for a walk, have some lunch, or do something else. And if it's one of those 3 video days, well, it can at least add an hour back to my time. And I've also decided to switch my internet plan from a residential to a business plan where I get 50 megabits per second upload speed, so it will even improve upon my upload times. Now, for each video, times vary. If I have a lot of sidebars, well, the time savings is significant because those plugins from MotionVFX, they really add to the rendering and export times, and I've had it take as long as 42 minutes for a 20-minute video, and it was just, I remember I shot the video, I think it was on my break time. I did editing on lunchtime, but the video didn't actually get published around 4 o'clock because it had to first render and then, of course, export. And some of you might be thinking, well, look, why are you rendering? I don't render. And if I didn't have plugins like MotionVFX, I wouldn't. But here's the problem. When it comes to MotionVFX plugins, if I don't render ahead of time, Sometimes they will just error out on the export. And I like using Compressor because I can batch compress multiple items, batch export. I've got more control over how I'm exporting the video instead of just exporting in Final Cut. Because if I export in Final Cut, I don't have any of those problems. But here's the thing, when you go to export without rendering, it's still going to render as part of the export, so you're not really saving a whole bunch of time. It isn't about the cost, it really is about the time, but who's kidding who? I'm not rich. I do not have a really successful channel like the Tech Chimp where he's got millions of subscribers, or like Max who has millions of subscribers as well. I have to make decisions, and yes, I think for me, it really matters because I did feel burned out after February, and I haven't produced many videos, mostly because there hasn't been any news. But honestly, I haven't felt like doing any videos. I've had several requests asking me to review products, and I've held off saying yes because I need time. I need time to relax. I need some time out. And giving me more time back is really the big thing about the Ultra, and that's why I'm choosing to go with it, even though it's $2,000 more. So I'm going to play with the accounting a little bit. Instead of getting the studio monitor right away, I'm just going to focus on getting the M1 Ultra. And so my spend is going to be about the same. I am planning on getting the studio display, and I know there are other monitors out there that certainly cost less. I've got an LG 4K monitor upstairs, and well, I got to tell you, it doesn't have that contrast. It doesn't have that look. And yes, you can find other monitors out there with better capabilities, but to be able to give you that look of a Retina display when you're editing video, to get a really good video display, you're not going to save $1,000. You're not going to save $700. You might be able to save $300 or $400 because I do believe that the studio display is a little bit overpriced, but that display that I had in the iMac Pro is just incredible. It gives me that look. And when I'm editing on the 4K display that I have upstairs, I just tested it in one video. I had to bring it back to my MacBook Air because when I looked at it, it's like the colors didn't look right. They look washed out. It looked like it was overexposed, and they weren't. So I do know that I am going to need to get that monitor, but what I'm doing, and this is where I do have an advantage having this channel, I do have money coming in from you guys watching the commercials through YouTube, and that is a huge benefit. I get equipment that I get to review, and I'm selling a bunch of equipment on Kijiji. So I'm selling memory cards, I'm selling some Paragear cards, I'm selling some of the Angelbird cards, I'm selling cages. I'm selling a whole bunch of stuff to help me fund the monitor, so hopefully I'll be able to get the monitor within a couple of weeks too. But yeah, it is a lot of money. I'm not kidding you, and you can definitely buy systems on Windows and Linux that are certainly cheaper. But you see, I'm going all in on saving time because I am tired, and January and February weren't an exception to how I produce videos. Or they weren't an exception to how the news and rumors come in. Right now, we're in a bit of a lull, but we're expecting to get a Canon R7 announcement this month in March. And I suspect when Canon is getting ready to announce that, we're going to start to get an awful lot of leaks coming out. And Canon's also supposed to be announcing other bodies and lenses. And once that starts to happen, I'm going to start producing a lot of content again. And what about Sony? Well, Sony's supposed to be announcing several cameras this year. So the news is going to pick up, and I'm going to be producing multiple videos every day, and that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be taxing, and having a computer that can really help me save time is going to make a huge difference. This thing is speed all over the place. And I'll know within the first week if I'm getting those performance numbers that I really expected. And if I'm not, I'll let you know as well. And if so, if I'm not getting those performance numbers, I'll return it to Apple and get the M1 Studio, just the basic entry level with the M1 Max, where I know I will get some performance improvements, and I'm going to get a larger screen because I do like working off a 5K display. I shoot with a Canon EOS R5, and pretty well everything I shoot is in 8K oversampled 4K, and having a larger preview area, having more room down on the timeline really makes a huge difference, and having a good quality display matters. And I know there's a discussion of whether Apple charges a premium over things that really there shouldn't be a premium on. And yes, I get it. They put one of their A processors, the A13, inside it for better speakers and better webcams and all that stuff. And to be honest with you, when I'm doing video editing, I'm not going to be using this computer for any of that stuff. I usually edit with headphones on. So I'm paying for things that I don't really need in a monitor, and I get that. It's not like I can choose this monitor without those options, and I really do wish that was an option for this display, because I'd be very happy saving $300, because that $300 US works out to be about $500 Canadian. And that currency exchange does make a difference. My audience, I would say, is 30% is coming from the US, but 70% comes from around the world. And that foreign exchange has a huge impact. Canada and Australia, we pay about 30% more just because we don't have a US dollar. And of course, in Europe and UK, well, even though their currencies are worth more, they have the same numeric value in front. And countries like Brazil, they have huge import taxes. So I do get that these are very, very expensive, that the MacBook Pro, the M1 Max, is a very good computer, but one of the reasons why I like the Mac Studio is a desktop. And because this is so much money, I'm going to be getting Apple Care with it. And the Apple Care works out to be around $198 or $200. And that's for 3 years. So $200, whereas if I bought the MacBook Pro, it's about double that price. So I save myself money over the MacBook Pro if I need any repairs. And because Apple has now switched, so here's an update on something I was talking about a couple of days ago. Apple has changed their Apple Care to Apple Care Plus for the Mac and Mac displays. And while in the US, you can purchase your Apple Care on an annualized basis, when it comes to countries like Canada, Germany, New Zealand, Australia, United Kingdom, and Japan, we still have to purchase a fixed term, which is 3 years. So you get 2 years in extension to the standard warranty, but the entire 3-year term is using the Apple Care Plus terms and conditions. So if I accidentally damage it, they have terms in there that allow you to, so for the display, I think it's something around $129 you have to pay, and they'll repair the display, and anything else, it can be up to around $400, and then they'll repair it for that fee, plus taxes, of course. But the real benefit to me in this new system is that once that term is up, you can then continue Apple Care Plus on an annualized basis. And I'm assuming it's going to be around, well, US price is, I think it's $69.99, which is $70. No, it's $59.99, which is $60. So Canadian, that's around $75 a year. So if I spend more money, because this is a lot more money than I've ever spent on a computer. Normally I spend around $3,000. Ever since I was a kid, I always spent $3,000. I got a much beefier machine. Whether I was buying an Amiga, a Windows machine, a Wintel machine, or a Mac, I've always pretty well bought a high-end machine because I get the performance I need out of it. But this is about 40% that I normally spend. So by getting the Apple Care Plus for an extra 2 years or so, I can extend the life of it. So on a year-over-year basis, I'm not spending more. And if I can extend the life of this computer to 6 years, I will actually save money, even with the money that I spend on the Apple Care Plus. So those are definitely some of my decisions. And this is kind of why I've gone about doing it. I know this video has nothing to do with my news channel where I focus on camera news and rumors. But this video is really about the behind the scenes on the technology that I use for video editing and rendering. And I know I could use Adobe Premiere, and I really don't like Adobe Premiere because in the past they've been very, very slow to upgrade. They've got performance issues, and my favorite outside of Final Cut is DaVinci Resolve. It works really well on Unix and Linux platforms. It works on Mac, it works on Windows. It's very, very easy to cross-platform. Their color grading, color tools are just phenomenal. It's very fast. It's a very, very good package. I think Blackmagic has done an incredible job with DaVinci Resolve. It's just a truly amazing product. And I probably would have ended up buying that if it wasn't just a color tool. Back, I think, in 2015, when I bought into Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve was just a color tool at the time, and I needed a non-linear editor. And I just, from the price point of view, paying Adobe, $50 to $80 a month Canadian, to me was just not something I wanted to do. I wasn't doing a YouTube channel at that point. And so Final Cut, $300, which is the same price as DaVinci Resolve. They do have a free version. And I highly recommend taking a look at that free version because you can play around with it for months on end and determine if it's right for you. Apple also provides a 30-day trial with Final Cut Pro, and I highly recommend you taking a look at both because they fundamentally approach tracks and assembling your content in different ways. I prefer the Final Cut magnetic timeline, but others like what some of my friends' YouTube channels, I'm forgetting their names. I know many others out there that prefer DaVinci Resolve and how it works. So again, you want to try your tools and see what they work best. But for my channel, I really do think that the M1 Ultra is going to work for me. And I'm hoping to be able to get one this Friday. But that could fall through. We'll just have to wait and see. And I will keep you updated in the behind-the-scenes pieces of my regular videos on the level of performance that I'm getting. And I've got some great clips that I can use. I can use my standard videos and show how a video clip rendered on my MacBook Air, the M1 MacBook Air, compares to my new Mac Studio. But I also have this personal video, this film that I'm working on that is, I did one last year. It's an hour and 20 minutes long. And on this guy here, it took about 1 hour and 11 minutes to render and export, no, just to export alone. And I got to tell you, it's each clip has at least 6 effects on it. I do color grading effects. I do balancing effects. I've got so many different effects for each clip that it really does put a system through its paces. So taking a 2-hour project like that and rendering it out and exporting, I think would be a really great test. I'll do it on the MacBook Air as well as the new Mac Studio. And then for my videos for the studio, give you an idea of what it's doing to save me in time. When you think of $2,000, it's a number. And you have to look at it as a number. If you're just looking at getting a computer for your personal use, for your family, for editing videos, then yes, $2,000 is a lot of money. But if you're able to make money from your camera gear and your editing, then you have to look at that $2,000 in terms of that time spent editing. How much does that $2,000 in purchasing power give back to you in editing time, in free time that you can then use for either better quality of life or generating more income? And then at the end of the day, it's really easy to look at that $2,000 and determine if the payback, the return on investment is there. And that's really what I'm focused on. I know I keep sort of rambling on about this one point, but it really, really matters to me so much. And I've been kind of going back and forth for the past week or so, trying to figure out which one I want for me, which is why I didn't order right away. I was very close to ordering right away and I held off. And I think it just sort of hit me Friday and Saturday that, do I want to keep doing this channel? And I asked myself, why is that? And it's because of the amount of time. And a lot of videos that I get, or the information that I get, will come at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night. And sometimes it's 2 to 3 hours for me to get to shoot and upload it. This M1 Ultra will save a huge amount of time, and that means me going to bed at midnight instead of 1 o'clock or 1:30, and that is huge. That makes a big difference. That's my plan. Hopefully this Friday I will have an unboxing of the Mac Studio, and who knows, we'll have to see about the Studio display. It depends on whether I'm able to sell any of my memory cards, my cages, or other items, including the slider. I've decided that I'm going to sell that not because I don't like it, but because I've got a lot of gear and I need to reinvest back into the channel in terms of the editing system. And because the R5 has 8K video, what I've noticed, I've been able to simulate a lot of what the motorized slider can do by shooting in 8K and then creating those Ken Burns effects where I'm moving from left to right, right to left, where I'm zooming out or zooming in. And really, that's good enough for me. And if you look at the recent review I did of the Angelbird, new AV Pro XG cards and the AV Pro 4 terabyte and 2 terabyte cards, it worked really, really well. But that's it for, let's try that again. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Please do subscribe. Not only does it help my channel grow, but you'll get notifications of new videos as they come out, so you can be better informed on, well, camera gear, as well as, well, how I edit, because this channel is not just about news and rumors on camera gear. It's about behind the scenes of how I go about producing content and the trials and tribulations, the challenges and opportunities that are there. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.